What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the latest film coming from director Matthew Vaughn, and that film is called Argylle. Directed by Matthew Vaughn and starring people like Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Rockwell, Bryan Cranston, Catherine O'Hara, Henry Cavill, John Cena, Ariana DeBose, Samuel L. Jackson, and many more. Argylle is the latest over-the-top action spy espionage thriller coming from Matthew Vaughn. But before we get into my thoughts, let's hear a word from today's sponsor. Whether you're trying to get yourself in the right headspace for the day, maybe you got a lot of stress going on in your day-to-day life, or you're like me and you do not have a good sleep schedule, you're going to want to try out the sponsor of today's video, and that is Hemp Honey. They use all natural ingredients, no GMOs, no artificial flavors, infused with their hemp extract to give you a various amount of products that can give you different forms of alleviation for your specific needs. Me personally, as I mentioned, I don't sleep all that well, so I've been trying their Hemp Honey sticks, the sleep version, which these are great. You can literally ingest them right out of the stick itself. You can put it into your coffee, into your tea, whatever the case may be. And I'd like it because it doesn't make me ever feel overly drowsy or anything like that. But instead, once I've actually fallen asleep, I'm having far deeper sleep, waking up feeling far more rested. And the kind folks over at Hemp Honey are giving you guys the chance to get 10% off of your order over on their website by following the link in my description box down below and putting promo code Perez10 at checkout. Again, a big thanks to Hemp Honey for sponsoring today's video. I really appreciate it. So going into this movie, I really didn't know if I was gonna love it or if I was gonna just kind of feel like whatever about it. I saw the trailers plenty of times. I feel like this was one of those movies that I saw marketing for all over the place, whether it be on YouTube with ads or some other random social media platform, or just going to see movies in theaters. Over the course of the last year, I've seen the trailer for this movie and its various marketing countless times. And Matthew Vaughn is a director I've always enjoyed. Of course, he's done things like the Kingsman films, as well as things like X-Men First Class. And he has a very distinct style, of course, a lot of the times being over the top and pretty ridiculous, but very much being homages to a lot of the spy and espionage films of the 60s and 70s. And so going into this one, it seemed like it was going to be very similar, very big, very over the top, very colorful, but still kind of having its toes in that over the top spy espionage genre that Matthew Vaughn is so good at. So let's talk about what this movie's all about without any spoilers, because I'm happy to say I went into this movie expecting it to be something that the trailers had shown all of it, and I'm happy to say there was a lot about this movie that's not in the marketing, which put a smile on my face. This movie focuses on Bryce Dallas Howard as an author known as Ellie Conway. She's created an incredibly popular book series known as Argylle, where she focuses on a character named Argylle, who's a special agent, and in her mind, Argylle is played by Henry Cavill, and you also have John Cena in that spy world in her mind, as well as Ariana DeBose and people like Dua Lipa as well. The movie starts off, she's got all this success, and now she's about to write her 5th book. But what she doesn't know is that she's actually been watched by 2 different spy agencies. There's the good guys and this bad guy group called the Division. And not long into the film, thanks to the spy played by Sam Rockwell in this film, she ends up learning that a lot of the stuff that she's been writing in her books have either predicted things that have happened or are predicting things that are going to happen or have been too closely tied to the things that have actually happened in the spy world. So now what she's writing and what she's going to write next has piqued the interest of the bad guys, of the good guys, and she finds herself in the mix of this big spy espionage adventure. And of course, as somebody who is just a writer, deals with a lot of anxiety, and carries her cat around with her everywhere she goes, doesn't even want to get into a relationship, she's not necessarily prepped for an adventure like this. And so I won't say much more in terms of the story and the narrative. What you see in the trailers in a lot of ways is the base setup of the movie. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot about this movie that's actually not in the trailers. As the movie was going for like the first hour or so, I thought to myself, okay, it feels like I'm kind of doing a checklist in my mind of moments I remember seeing in the trailer. I saw the movie with a press audience as well as a public audience, and there were moments that were in the trailer that I saw over and over and over again that were getting laughs from the audience that just made me scratch my head and go like, didn't we all see this trailer like a million times? Or maybe it was just me, I suppose. So there were moments that didn't work for me in terms of humor just because I had seen the lines and I had seen the moments of humor in the trailer over and over again, and I started to think maybe this movie was going to be something where I kind of saw most of the good moments in the trailer. That's not to say I hadn't been enjoying it within the first hour. I do think it was entertaining. I do think it was fun and funny. I think there was some great fun, big over-the-top Matthew Vaughn action, but it felt like something that, again, was just all shown in the trailer. But I'm so happy to say that as the movie progressed, it leaned into it being this big over-the-top spy film that has all these twists and turns and double agents and triple agents and all these different reveals that consistently made the movie entertaining to watch. There were so many moments in the theater that I was in where the audience was gasping over some of these big reveals, twists, and turns. There are characters you think that are good for big portions of the film that turn out to be bad, and vice versa. There are times where you think a character is bad and they actually turn out to be good. And so there's so many moments in the film that keep you guessing on who is the person you should be rooting for, who should you not be rooting for. And I think for the most part, Bryce Dallas Howard does an incredible job of kind of being the audience character throughout the course of the runtime. Here's this character who's anxious, she's a writer, she likes writing spy espionage stories, but she's not necessarily somebody who's fit to be amidst one of those adventures. And so now she finds herself in the mix of all this. There's a lot of violence, there's a lot of big over-the-top things going on, there's a lot of car chases and all these different things that she's terrified by. And so we get to kind of go along the ride with her as she uncovers things about this spy world. And yeah, I just found it to be a good, entertaining, fun time. I think Matthew Vaughn once again showcases why he's really good at this genre. I saw for the most part, based on some of my peers who put some thoughts out there already, that most people have enjoyed this film, though I do think that one thing I will say is that it's really going to depend on your taste. And we'll get into my negatives and my gripes in just a moment, but in terms of my overall thoughts on the film, I thought it was a good, fun time. I'm happy to finally be out of the big January releases that were just weak as it typically is. I've just been watching a lot of movies. I feel like I've been overly negative or kind of when it comes down to a lot of movies that I've reviewed over the course of this first part of 2024. But I'm happy to finally be leaning into February, where it seems a little bit more promising with a film like Argylle that was just a good, fun time. I actually went into the film and I'm kind of dealing with vertigo right now, which is really sucks. It's not too bad, thankfully, but I have been dealing with a lot of lightheadedness, which has been increasing my anxiety, making me sleepy when I take the meds for the vertigo, as well as kind of having these moments of headache. So I went into the movie kind of not feeling the best, and I ended up taking my meds right as I got to the movie, which made me a little bit groggy, a little bit sleepy, but I'm happy to say that I never fell asleep. Nothing ever took me out of the film. The movie itself actually piqued my interest enough to keep me wide awake throughout the course of the movie. So I think Matthew Vaughn created a pretty well-paced movie here for what it is. I do think it's a very fun time. There's a lot of big, over-the-top, ridiculous, silly action, and I think for the most part, when it comes down to just being an homage to old spy films of the 60s and 70s, while also having that flair of ridiculousness that Matthew Vaughn brings to the table, I think that Argylle was a really good, fun time that I highly recommend checking out in theaters. Again, that had a lot of fun surprises that are not in the trailer. I'm so grateful that there was a lot more of this movie that's not in any of the marketing. Now, if I had to lean into any of my negatives, the movie is a little over 2 hours long, and I do think at times it felt a little overly long. There are some moments I feel could have been trimmed out. However, the story does kind of need that length to kind of do a lot of the things it does. And I think at times it's one of those situations where I think pacing could have helped in certain moments and just a couple of scenes could have been trimmed out. I don't necessarily think that this movie needed to have been drastically shorter, but I do think it's something that felt just a tad too long for what it was. And I mentioned before that it's really going to depend on your personal taste on whether you enjoy this film or not, and I think more so than any of the other Kingsman films that Matthew Vaughn has done, or X-Men First Class, or any of the other movies that he's done in the mix, this movie is definitely leaning into goofy and ridiculous at times. It's very self-aware, it knows what it is, and on one hand, I enjoyed that. I had a laugh with certain moments, and I was really enjoying the ridiculousness when it came to the big, vibrant, over-the-top action. But as I was watching the movie, there were moments where I thought, okay, they're leaning too heavily into the goofy in these portions of the movie, and it oftentimes kind of removes some of the stakes for me, or at least made it feel like, okay, I know all these characters are going to be okay. This isn't the kind of movie where I felt like kind of gripped to my seat, where I was like, oh my god, is the character going to make it out of a situation or not? It felt pretty safe when it came down to the characters and their adventure. It was just a fun adventure. It was fun to watch, but I do think sometimes the heightened level of goofiness at times, as well as the overlong pacing, sometimes made the film just feel, a little bit okay in moments. But on an overall level, I'm happy to say I enjoyed the film. I'm happy to say that it was a good time. There was tons of really great funny moments. I really enjoyed the fact that throughout the course of the film, Ellie Conway is having these visions where she's creating the next story for Argylle as she's on this spy adventure, and so she would see Sam Rockwell or somebody else do something, and she would kind of replace it in her mind with Henry Cavill. And there was these funny moments throughout the course of the film where Sam Rockwell is fighting people and he's getting his ass kicked or something, but then it would switch to Henry Cavill and she would kind of see him doing it in a much more badass and suave manner, if you will. And so for the most part, I really enjoyed the film. Again, I thought it was a good, fun time, very well shot, some really big, fun, over-the-top action, some pretty stupid and ridiculous moments that worked for me as somebody who can appreciate a movie that's self-aware and stupid, but I recognized as I was watching it that there's levels of stupidity in this film and ridiculousness that are just not going to work for everybody. So I definitely want to hear what all of you guys have to say. Did you check out Argylle? Are you planning on checking out Argylle? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below. Hit that like button if you guys enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more early movie reviews and just movie reviews in general here on the channel in the future. Oh, and one last thing, I don't want to give you guys any spoilers, but definitely stick around for the mid-credits scene. I think it's going to put a smile on a lot of people's faces if you're a fan of Matthew Vaughn's work. I'll see you guys in the next one, all right? Bye-bye.